Welcome to this special edition of Wildfire Watch, Marin's emergency alert system. I'm Rich Shortall, Executive Officer of Safe Marin. Tonight, we're going to talk about the most important step in wildfire response, and that is alerting residents of a threat and, of course, letting you know what to do. Your safety and the safety of all Marin residents depends on getting the accurate and fast notifications out and keeping everyone informed during an emergency. Our guests this evening know all about this, so it is a pleasure to introduce you to Marin's new Director of Emergency Management, Stephen Torrance, and Mari Ochoa, Marin County Fire Public Information Officer. So welcome to both of you. Glad you guys could be here.
Thank you.
So before we get started, I would like to invite our audience to join our conversation by posting your questions in the Q&A function in the Zoom. We will address these at the end of the half hour. If we don't get to all the questions live, we will post responses on the Safe Marin website. So we'll get to everything that way. So please check in after the show. So now let's get started with Stephen, who is going to tell us about the Marin County Office of Emergency Management.
Well, first, thank you very much for having us, Rich. It's a pleasure to be with you. The Office of Emergency Management, it's a organization within the Marin County Fire Department. Our task is actually being able to get the county, the cities, and the unincorporated area, in addition to the public safety partners that we have in the utilities and also our businesses in Marin County, ready for any type of emergency. We focus on not only prevention, but preparedness, mitigation, and recovery. But also a large part of this in which we're here today is also the response side of this as well. Within our organization, we have about 9 people. We have about 4 coordinators who are focused on developing plans, writing as much as possible, and then also doing some exercises for the county. We also we have our public information officer who's joining us as well, in addition to some of our grants and mitigation specialists that are on our team. It's a very robust team, but we have a very tall task of being able to respond to not only just the natural threats, but the human-induced emergencies that happen, looking at utility failures and things of that nature. On our sunny side days, is like I like to call them, some people call them blue sky days. We are doing a lot of plan writing and exercises. We oversee 3 major plans on behalf of the county. Some of those are the emergency operations plan. How will the county respond? And also the annexes that go along with that, specifically looking at how we develop shelters and things of that nature. Also, part of that is looking at the continuity of operations. How will the county and our public safety partners be able to continue to provide services in the middle of an emergency? We don't want to stop providing essential services, so that plan allows for us to continuously respond. Also, the last big major one, which we're going through right now, is our hazard mitigation plan. How do we actually build resilience and resistance into our existing infrastructure? What type of research and development should we be doing, and more? Our office also oversees the Emergency Operations Center, which is where we bring everyone together in the middle of a response to make sure that we have a coordinated response. So we're not doing 20 things at once. We have one group of people that are moving in the same direction so we can provide essential services to the members of the community and also the members of our unincorporated areas as well, to make sure that they have the services that they need as well. So that is our emergency operation. It's a very tall order, but we have a great team that's supporting that. In addition to that, we also oversee alert and warning, which is actually why we're here today, to be able to connect with that. We're happy to talk about some of the measures that we put in place to make sure that people get those timely alerts.
Well, that is quite a challenge. You have a lot to do. That's great. And it's wonderful to see that it's sort of the hub of cooperation with all of Marin's agencies to make us all safer. So we are here to talk about alert and warning. So can you tell us a little bit about the systems that we have here in Marin?
Yes, so commonly what we have within the county is Alert Marin. That is the name that we share with a lot of members of our community. But what that system is, it's a collaboration of a lot of different tools and systems. Not only is it just text messages and emails and phone calls, but it also allows for us to partner with different agencies to be able to send out coordinated messaging. So we have our text messages that can go out, but we also allow for those to go out in the middle of an emergency to say, do we also need to send out a phone call to someone's house in the middle of the night to wake them up? Text messages don't always wake people up. In the event that we have something that's truly serious, being able to get those required actions out, whether it be what most people know as the Amber Alert style, we can send those out in the event that we do a little bit of we have to do an evacuation order. We can send those out to the members of the community to make sure that we can get the message to the people as quick as possible. We want to be able to target those messages for the appropriate audience, but we also want to make sure that people in the community know how to have access to systems that allow for the message to get to them, and then also where do those follow-ups get in. So we want to make sure that people are signing up for those as much as possible.
So it's really an integrated system, and people should sign up for all of it. Sign up for Nixle, sign up for Alert Marin. And how does WIA work a little bit?
Yes, great question. So what we do is we look at Nixle as that awareness piece. As we start looking at that, and we want to make sure that that text message gets up. But as I mentioned, a text message might not wake us up in the middle of the night when there's a fire that happens at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So we move up and we start building into our capacity. And those notifications that actually wake you up in the middle of the night and the phone's blaring, that's the WIA, the Wireless Emergency Alert. And those come out to the community and they give you specific actions that you should definitely take action on. So we want to make sure that people know exactly what they should be doing, where they should go, and then also where to follow up. And we send those out in the event that we require action in a specific community, so people have the notification via it's an audible, but also they can see a clear message on what to do.
That's great. But just kind of a reminder to everybody, you want to be sure that your cell phone, check your notifications, that you are signed up to receive all these alerts. That's very important, or you may not get them.
That is correct. And looking at Alert Marin, we want to make sure that everyone is signed up. The text message, the 888-777 Nixle component, that's going to get you the text message. But those phone calls to your cell phones, the follow-up voicemails, all of those require sign-ups. And we want to make sure that people know that they can go and sign up. And then additionally, if you want to make sure that your loved ones are safe, whether it's keeping your children's school, you get those notifications. That's where you want to be able to get signed up for, because we don't necessarily know exactly where everyone's going to be, but we want to make sure that you can get the message in the event that you have something that is involving a loved one, your child, or where you work. Those messages can still get to you, and that's via the sign-up method.
Right. So sign up for Nixle, sign up for Alert Marin. If you have a cell phone, you will get the wireless emergency alerts, like the Amber Alerts, right?
That is correct. Of course, you don't have to sign up for a wireless emergency alert, but we highly recommend that people do not turn that off, but definitely make sure that you sign up for Alert Marin to make sure that you have all the phone numbers, all your locations put into that system so you can get the message no matter where you are.
Super. So the alert comes out, what do we do?
Great question. And that's where we start looking, and we have a very robust plan where we start building out the different steps. So with that, we start realizing people ask us, where do we go? Emergencies are very dynamic. So with that, we want to make sure that people know that we typically will send up that follow-up message via Alert Marin with those additional locations. So once that initial wireless emergency alert goes out, it'll tell you to evacuate. But we'll send that follow-up that says, here's where to go. Where is the Family Reunification Center where you can find your loved ones just in case you are separated from them. Those will be posted on various channels, whether it be with our press releases, our social media accounts, which we'll talk about a little bit, but those messages will not necessarily be in that first message, it'll be in that second. And we want to make sure that people know that those messages are going to go out typically as a follow-up with those locations, and it'll provide clear direction on the address, the services that are going to be provided, and then also if there's a mapping capability, that's what we'll also have on the emergency portal, where people can see where that location is, just in case people don't necessarily have the exact location.
So these systems are all set up so that you don't just get the alert like evacuate now. You're going to get a lot of follow-up information, guidance on where to go, and everything else that's necessary to help keep people safe.
Exactly. Yes.
So related to that, besides Nixle, Alert Marin, WIA, there are other systems, I believe. Mari, you want to talk to us about that?
Absolutely. I would like to ask everybody watching right now to please find the link emergency.marincounty.org. This is your go-to resource during an emergency. All of the information that's coming in across the county, including our local jurisdictions, cities, towns, all of that information is going to be incorporated on this website. The messaging that you'll find and the resources on emergency.marincounty.org will point community members in the direction of shelters, temporary evacuation points, additional resources following an emergency. The next resource I want to highlight is tuning into your broadcast stations. So we have relationships with our TV stations, with our radio stations, where we provide them the most updated information via news release, social media, and interviews that we provide them during an emergency so that we could keep them updated with everything that's going on. And we really partner with these broadcast stations so they can help us disseminate information via all the channels. We want to reach the community wherever they are, and our broadcast stations, our local broadcast stations, are an incredible resource during an emergency. The third resource I'd like to point out is our social media accounts. So we have the County of Marin government social media account and the Marin County Fire handles for Facebook and Instagram. Both of those accounts are going to be providing resources, aligned messaging with alert systems, and highly likely pointing you to the emergency portal as well to follow up for any additional resources that you need.
Right. Well, that's kind of exciting. So a lot of information being pushed out.
Definitely.
So everybody should know how to get to that portal or website for old people like Nate. And there are a number of social media feeds that people should pay attention to.
Yes.
You also talked about the news, which is going to give me an opportunity to bring in our next guest. I'd like to take just a second to introduce KCBS radio reporter Jeffrey Schaub, who's been doing this for a long time, is going to tell us a little bit about the role that KCBS plays during a disaster.
Thank you. It's nice to be here with you all. In a nutshell, KCBS is the all-news radio station for the Bay Area. We have 1 million listeners a week, which is a lot of people. That's about 10% of the Bay Area population. We're 24/7, news, traffic, weather, sports, a lot of interviews. But when there's a major emergency, whether it's an earthquake or the many wildfires that we've had, unfortunately, or flooding, which we've had a lot of, we kick into high gear. That's our responsibility, is to provide the very latest information. So I'm going to ask folks to do the following. Favor us, make us one of your favorites on your car audio system, on your computer. You can also do it through the Odyssey app, AUDACY, and we are at 106.9 FM, 106.9 FM, and 740 AM. So, to give you an idea of what we're all about, we are the official United States government emergency alert station. So we're sanctioned by the government to provide critical information when it happens. If it's a big enough emergency, our signal actually gets sent simulcast to all other radio stations in the Bay Area. So we have a very significant responsibility. We have a newsroom in San Francisco, about 100 people. On top of that, we have about 25 traffic reporters and producers. We have a large news center, and when an event like this were to occur, and I've been a part of a number of them, including the Tubbs Fire and the other fires in the North Bay, as well as the Paradise Fire, the Camp Fire there, we bring in additional resources. And we hyper-focus on whatever information we can get. And of course, your organization would be key. And we are in the process of trying to develop a strategy where we can become even more hyper-focused on this information. To give you an idea of what occurred during the Tubbs Fire in the fall of 2017 in Santa Rosa, where we lost 6,000 homes in Sonoma and Napa counties, I was dispatched at about 3:15 in the morning, and I would say within 2 or 3 hours we had about 5 reporters that had come up into the region. Eventually we had 7 reporters on that story, in addition to the resources that we had in the newsroom. And so we're the eyes and ears on what's going on. What's great about the new technology is that hopefully we'll be able to say, folks in this neighborhood are being told to do this and this. Folks in this neighborhood are being told to stand by, that kind of a thing. So that's critical, right?
No,
Absolutely.
that's good stuff. I'm going to make a little pitch for KCBS right now, which is I live in a neighborhood that frequently has power outages and sometimes lasting 4 days. And as soon as those hit, and that oftentimes means that our cell coverage and everything's out,
Right.
I go right to KCBS. I really appreciate the way the information is provided. As you point out, there's a lot of cooperation between KCBS and Office of Emergency Management and government agencies. So would you say that the information that you provide has generally been, for want of a better word, vetted and accurate and based on what you're seeing and what you're hearing from the professionals?
Yeah, I would, by and large. Sometimes government agencies, emergency responders don't have all of the information yet, and it just develops. And then we always couch that by saying, here's what we know and that kind of thing. But I think we're all getting better at this. And I think the wildfires have really, we understand that we all play an important role. There has to be a synergy there among all of us because it is for real, as well as talking to people about, and we do this constantly during, even not during fires, like for Ember Stomp, which we had this fall, right, at the Marin County Civic Center. I do stories, other reporters do stories on how to prepare your home, how to harden your home, what things need to be done around your property, why you need to have go bags, in your car and in your house, and your medication. All of the stuff we've talked about over and over needs to be reinforced so people have a certain level of confidence, familiarity, and they can act on that.
Right. Well, Fire Safe Marin is pretty much in the role of providing information to the public, and this is where we really do appreciate the strong partnership we have with KCBS because you help get those messages out to the public, and that really means a lot. Marion and Steven, and I believe when we have a disaster like this, there's oftentimes conferences or opportunities to interface. How does that all work? How do you get the news out and work with the reporters and so forth?
Yeah, so that would come in the form of a press release or a media notification or advisory where we would let hosts or reporters know that there's going to be a press conference occurring where we're providing the latest information to all of the reporters so that they can help us disseminate to the public. So a lot of times you can also find that live on Facebook, live streaming, but in addition to, you will find that live on some of your local broadcast stations.
Yeah. So there's, for the audience, there's a lot of opportunities to get information, and it's really, to some extent, it's up to you to plug into all these systems.
Definitely.
I think we're lucky and very fortunate, Marin, that we have a great Office of Emergency Management, lots of coordination of the systems and the agencies, a very robust alerting system with a lot of backups to it, which I think is important. And then we have organizations like KCBS Radio that plug right into all that. So just tune into all these things and you really can find out what's going on. And of course, take the steps to prepare yourself and your family to be safe, right? Okay, well, let's see if we can take a few questions from people who are tuning into this. Give me a second here. I got to scroll through this, what we have. So here's one, which is a very common one, which is, what would you recommend for people who live in Marin County who don't have cell phone coverage for getting these messaging and whatnot?
Yeah. Excellent question, and of course we see this throughout the county. This is happening throughout the entire state. We want to make sure that people know what that primary phone that you have in your home is. As long as we have that home phone within the Alert Marin system, making sure it's signed up so we can get that message to you. So that'll be the primary point, that we send a phone call and or a voicemail to your phone that's at home. We want to make sure that we have the accurate information, so please sign up. Make sure that your address is listed as your home. So in the event that we send out a message to that geographic location, that phone number actually receives the message, whether it be an awareness message or it's a strongly recommended, you will get that message. So that's one of the things that we do to make sure that we can get the message to everyone, regardless of if you have a cell phone or if you just have a landline that's at home. Making sure it's into the system is the primary way that we get in contact with people in those areas.
Right. So how does reverse 911 play into this?
That's one of the exciting updates that we have with Alert Marin, is being able to have some partnerships with our public safety utilities, and then also some of our partner agencies, and being able to bring in data from other sources to be able to say, if you're not signed up in the event that we have an extreme emergency, we can make sure that we pull in that information to say we can get the message to you as quick as possible. And some of those things that we want to make sure is that if that phone number is in our system, we can say, this is how we're going to get that to you, and then also the follow-up as well. It's going to be a voicemail, it's going to be a phone call. That's the way that we're going to get those messages to our community.
So if your telephone is turned off, can you get a WIA message?
Unfortunately, no. So there are two things that we are concerned about when it comes to cell phones primarily. And we are the types of messages that do go to a personal cell phone. If you do turn your phone off at night, unfortunately, you will not get that message. So we highly encourage people to do two things. Number one, keep your cell phone on, but also making sure that you, when you have the do not disturb, that WIAs will go through and make sure that they still hit your phone. And also the phone numbers, making sure that you identify the Alert Marin phone number as a phone number that will override your do not disturb at night, so those phone calls can still get to you in the event that we do have to send something out at a late hour.
Great. So I would add a little bit more for wildfire risk. The chances of having a catastrophic wildfire really are weather dependent. So when you have a red flag warning day, that's the one day, make sure you do not turn that cell phone off. That's when you really need to be paying attention. So Jeffrey, there's a question. Can you explain a little bit more about EAS? I mean, I get it that you can put it out, but what's the background of that and how does that work?
Well, let's take the National Weather Service, for example. They'll send a bulletin to us saying we're issuing a major flood advisory or a threat advisory, and I'm trying to think of the next level up, but it's not coming to me right now. Okay, and so then it's our obligation to turn around and put that on the air. Very often you will hear, if it's a very significant event, you'll hear that tone that comes out. This is high squeal pitched tone, and that alerts the audience that there's going to be an announcement from our newsroom of what they need to know. People are to seek higher ground in the North Bay along the Russian River, because it's, the flood could crest at 32 feet within the next few hours. Whatever the message is, and then we will continue to update that. So that's coming from the federal government or state government, for that matter. And that's our responsibility, and that's how that works.
Well, it's a great system to have in place there. It's and thanks to KCBS.
All around the country.
All around the country. Well, it's good to have.
Thank goodness for AM radio, which has just been saved.
Yes, I've been following that. Yeah, I'm all for it. I'm on it all the time. Here's a really common question about Alert Marin. I've been signed up for Alert Marin for 7 years, and I've never gotten an Alert Marin message, which I consider to be a good thing. So it's not uncommon to have a wildfire, not catastrophic, in a community, and we hear from residents, I didn't get an Alert Marin message. Why didn't I?
Yes, and to your point, that is a good thing. When we start looking at being able to tailor the messages to members of our community, if you are not in the geographic area that our fire department or our sheriff's department is saying these are the areas of concern, you might not get a message. But that's where we also utilize some of our external sources, our press releases, our social media, to let people know, yes, there was a message that went out. You can still see it that way. But that message might not have gone to you because you might just be outside of the geographic borders of that area. But we also want to make sure that people know that there's opportunities to get messages through different ways. In the event that sometimes we do send out a message, people might say, I didn't get it on a text message, but I did get it on my phone. We want to make sure that people know how that they can go back to the to our emergency management portal, where they actually can look into their information to see exactly where the alert went, but also they can also verify their information. And this is another exciting thing that we're doing is we're activating a portal where people can go in and verify their address. Being able to sign up within the portal, have a basic username and password, no email, and that's one of the things that we've heard from our partner agencies is that people were saying that this was a barrier, so we've made sure that people can go in, verify their information, and if they didn't get it, they can go in and they can update their information, or they can go through and they can add the information if they didn't have the number that they thought they did.
I have to thank you for fixing that, because that's something I hear a lot from the public, so that's a wonderful thing. We're really excited that that's now back in place.
Yes.
Slightly off topic, but one more aspect of the alert and warning that came a question: the high-low siren and law enforcement. How's that all work in the system?
Yeah, and that's one of the partners that we actually work with on a daily basis. So the police departments throughout Marin County have all implemented this to some degree. There might be a couple that don't do it, but for the most part, from my understanding, everyone does it. Where in the event that we are doing evacuations, the fire department works and they help designate what that area is. And our police departments will go through and do our best to do the high-low sirens. If you hear that, that's your moment to start packing up and get out as quick as possible. That's our way of making sure that we can get in contact with as many people, and that will be in addition to the emergency alerts that are going out via text message, via phone calls, and more. We want to make sure that no matter where you are, no matter what devices that you have, that our public safety partners are letting you know, please get out of the area. This area is in that immediate danger. But that is a partnership that we have with all our law enforcement partners and our sheriff's department here in Marin.
Another example of cooperation in Marin here.
And
Exactly.
if I could add, Rich, this is also a great reminder for the public to find and locate those evacuation routes within your neighborhood. So make sure that you have at least 2 evacuation routes located so that you can leave as quickly as possible and safely.
Good point. And leave quickly. That's,
Yes.
For those who don't know, by the way, this comes up sometimes. The high-low siren, if you ever watched the movie The Police Chase Somewhere in Europe, that's the high-low siren. Yeah. That's the sound of it, yeah.
Right.
So this is kind of a question that does come up once in a while, which is should there occasionally be a test of the alert and warning system? Like I said, I have it 7 years and it's never gone off, but good thing, I think. But I know that comes up and there's pros and cons.
Yes, and so there are different ways that we look to test. We are actively, as we start building out the capacity of the Alert Marin system, we're looking at the different ways. So there are certain communities where we'd actually do a text message test with evacuations, whether it be in the western portion of Marin with Stinson Beach, where we do evacuations for tsunamis, and then we also partner with some of our local fire agencies for wildfire evacuations as well. Of course, there are a couple of regulations that we have with much power. We also have many regulatory bodies that we need to make sure that we don't over alert our public and get people to opt out. So what we're doing is trying to figure out what's the sweet spot of making sure that we can test the system. So we are making sure that we're sending out some text messages and phone calls as well, but we're actively looking at being able to test the full system and figuring out, okay, how does the system perform when we actually have to alert the entire county or a large population? So we are actively looking at that, but for the most part, we are testing the system pretty much monthly at a lower level.
Yeah. So another question is, sometimes in a pretty big disaster, the cell phones get clogged. So you're trying to phone your relative in Orange County or something like that. Does that have a negative impact on a system like WIA? Will the fact that the cell phones get overloaded, does that affect the ability to get those messages out, or is that something different?
So yeah, that's a great question. Although the systems are going to be using cell phone towers, the WIA message is not going to be something that stops you from sending out a message to your loved ones. We highly recommend that in the event that you know that there is an emergency happening, that you send out a text message instead of a phone call. It is highly likely that that text message will get out before that phone call will, because a lot of people are going to be doing the same thing. So focusing on those text messages and learning how to text is one of the things that we'd like to share with members of the public. But those WIA messages will go through and they will send out a message, and they will stay in place for sometimes for 2 hours to make sure that no matter if you were previously outside of the area and now coming in, that message can still get to you.
Right. So if you're counting on a landline to get some of your messaging and an incident happens large enough to generate a message going out on WIA, will you still be using Alert Marin to send out the messages on landlines at the same time?
That is absolutely correct. So our systems are intended to build upon each other. So in the event that we are sending out a wireless emergency alert, we will also be sending out those phone calls to the landlines, text messages. emails, and more to make sure that we are hitting every single source that's available to us in that situation. In the event that we are sending out that high level of an alert, we want to make sure that we're using all the tools in our cache to make sure that we can send a message and get in contact with as many people as possible. We don't want to take a risk on saying we don't know if someone's in this area. We will send it to whatever method that we can to make sure that you get your message.
Great. So in Southern Marin, they have the LRAD system, long range acoustic device, sirens, and now the ability to actually give voice messages over that. Is that integrated at all into this, or how does that fit into the system?
So that is where our partnerships come into place. So the County of Marin Office of Emergency Management, we don't necessarily operate that system. That is a system that is run by our partners in Southern Marin Fire. But we do have a strong collaboration with them, making sure that in the event that they are sending out a message, that we know that they're going to be sending it out, and then also they're going to tell us exactly what they're sending out. So our goal is to collaborate as much as possible on this to make sure that we have a unity of messaging, and then also making sure that in the event that they need something from us, we can support them in the delivery of that message to the community to make sure it's echoing and also making sure it's reinforcing what they're saying.
Great.
Can I just add something
please.
to that? Of course, we're talking about possible evacuation order. It can't be said enough that you need to have or should have a go bag. A go bag is basically, it could be a backpack, it could be something bigger than that, and you want to have a change of clothes, you want to have toiletries, you want to have any medications that you may need, and you can do that just by taking a few out of your regular bottle and perhaps putting them into another bottle so that you have those safe. You want to have your emergency contacts, you want to have, anything that you think that you're going to need for up to 72 hours and possibly more, but at least say 72 hours. And have one in your car as well. And the other thing that's critically important is make sure you have a family plan or a friend's plan. Where are you going to meet so that you can meet up and have contact with each other, and make sure you have the phone numbers and the texting capability and all of that. That's very, very critical, as you know, because it's a part of your plan and the county's plan as well, right?
Well, I think that's a really good point, that just being able to get the messages does not end what you need to do.
Exactly.
You need to prepare, and you can't do it the last minute. You have to think ahead. You have to have the go bag. You have to have a plan. You have to have a communications plan. So we'll make that our next special, that we'll get more in depth on some of those, but that's really true. So I'm going to leave with one last question, which I think really goes back to KCBS, and that is, if the power goes out, what do I do? Well, first thing I would say, that doesn't necessarily mean that your cell phone is not going to work. But if everything else fails and you happen to have a radio with batteries, KCBS radio.
You want to get a crank radio, and you can buy them in a number of places. You really want to have a crank radio. So you crank it up and it runs for quite some time, and you can listen to our station. I think on the crank radios it's only 7:40 a.m. That's critical. The other thing is, if you can afford to do this, I recommend that people get battery backup for their computer and for their Wi-Fi. So in the event that the power goes out for at least for some time, hopefully you can get on and do what you have to do and get information that way. It can be costly, but on the other hand, if you have the ability to do that, there's a certain sense of, confidence.
Personally, I've been looking more and more into radios rather than generators as a solution for this. And granted, a generator might be able to power more things in your house.
Right.
But if you don't run that portable generator very often and it's gasoline powered or whatever, it's not that easy to make it all work, and the thing doesn't start and whatnot. There's a lot to be said for the batteries. They come in all different sizes. But I think, to your point, that if you're, for the price of a generator, you oftentimes can buy one of these batteries. And you can take a look at the Fire Safe Marin website. There's some information about that.
Oh, it can be a battery that's this big.
Absolutely.
You can, it's literally, you got to go to the battery store. I don't want to pitch them, but I'm just saying. It might run it for 3 hours and then you turn it off and then, Yeah.
Good. Well, with that, I want to thank all of you. This has been wonderful. We've learned so much today. It's all very exciting. I thank all the audience for tuning in. For those of you who we didn't have a chance to get to your questions, give us a couple days, but then go to our website, firesafemarin.org, and we'll have the responses to all the questions posted there. And of course, this has been recorded, so tell your friends who sadly missed this presentation that they'll be able to find it on our YouTube channel. And again, thank you so much to all the guests. I really appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank
night.
you.